You know, I'm reminded of uh, there's a scene in The Princess Bride, great movie,
Great movie.
where he confronts the person who killed his father. And he says, offer me money, offer me power. I don't care.
So you just don't care. You want to share what you have to say.
I'll say what I want to say, and if the consequence of that is losing money, so be it.
Okay.
For decades, Silicon Valley was the undisputed heart of global innovation. If you wanted to build the future, you came here, where ideas became empires and startups became tech giants. But today, something unprecedented is happening. Major players like Hewlett-Packard and Oracle are packing up and leaving. So why is Silicon Valley losing its grip?
I see a clear path for Silicon Valley to become entwined with government, immune to competition, inefficient, bloated, and ultimately bested by other countries. And we're going to talk about the good old days of Silicon Valley when they depended on good products to make a buck, and now you depend on defending your monopoly and government contracting. If we're in a competition with China, for example, do we want our companies to face serious domestic competition, or do we want them to sit around and sit on American revenue streams and then eventually get creamed by China? I think it's time we keep taking those kind of arguments seriously and realize that competition is much better industrial policy.
The first major pressure is cost. Sky-high real estate prices, some of the highest corporate taxes in the country, and extreme living expenses have made Silicon Valley increasingly unsustainable. Office space that once symbolized success has turned into a massive financial burden. For many companies, staying no longer makes economic sense.
About escape and exiting kind of the strictures of government and society with things like seasteading, or wrote something about how someone needs to create the technology that enables freedom, and he was referring to seasteading. But he's never really been a libertarian in practice. People have asked him about Palantir, of course, and how can you justify this company that's basically an arm of the security state and mass surveillance? And his answer is always sort of like, well, better me than someone else, or someone has to do it. And that, of course, is not very firmly held libertarianism. But most of these guys, I think, aren't really libertarian in practice. I think the part of libertarian that appeals to them is that they don't want rules. They want ultimate freedom to do what they want. And there's something kind of childish or juvenile about that. And there's something kind of macho, or at least affected machismo and jingoism on their part. But they have taken that attitude that they are, in some cases, the cognitive or genetic elites, and that they have a right to rule.
The pandemic permanently reshaped the tech workplace. Remote and hybrid work models proved that teams could function, and even thrive, without being physically centralized. Once location became optional, Silicon Valley stopped being essential. Talent no longer needs to live near headquarters, and companies no longer need to pay Silicon Valley prices to hire the best minds.
Valley has gone full MAGA, full pro-Trump, and their vision or their desire for America and the world is deeply authoritarian. If you had asked me 20 years ago how I viewed Silicon Valley, maybe I would have said to you that it was, some of them are there were looking to do better things, to bring us closer together. Maybe I would have thought that even Mark Zuckerberg had a good heart. Maybe. Now we're in a whole different scenario. And it worries me that this growing militarization of our world through highly sophisticated surveillance technology provided by companies like Palantir and others, who, by the way, are massive supporters of Israel and its genocide in Gaza, and Silicon Valley's collusion with the Trump administration and many other regimes around the world, is something that we need to have on our radar right now. And until we find, in my view, alternative platforms, until we build alternative platforms, we are basically at the mercy of these companies.
Another major factor is regulation. California's regulatory environment is often described by executives as slow, complex, and costly. While intended to protect workers and communities, these regulations can slow innovation and expansion. In contrast, other states offer faster approvals, lower taxes, and fewer barriers to scaling. Silicon Valley was once defined by risk-taking and disruption. Today, critics argue it has become more corporate and cautious. Meanwhile, cities like Austin, Miami, Phoenix, and Nashville are emerging as new tech hubs, offering affordability, pro-business climates, and growing innovation communities. The culture of experimentation is spreading.
America has a secret weapon. That secret weapon is the H-1B. Without the H-1B, the scientific establishment of this country would collapse. Forget about Google. Forget about Silicon Valley. There would be no Silicon Valley without the H-1B. And you know what the H-1B is? It's the genius visa, okay? You realize that in the United States, 50% of all PhD candidates are foreign-born. At my system, one of the biggest in the United States, 100% of the PhD candidates are foreign-born. The United States is a magnet sucking up all the brains of the world, but now the brains are going back. They're going back to China. They're going back to India. And people are saying, oh my God, there's a Silicon Valley in India now. Oh my God, there's a Silicon Valley in China. Duh! Where did it come from? It came from the United States. So don't tell me that science isn't the engine of prosperity. You remove the H-1B visa and you collapse the economy. In Wall Street Journal, editorialized against a congressman who wanted to ban the H-1B, saying they'll take jobs away from the American people. The Wall Street Journal said, look, there are no Americans who can take these jobs. These are at the highest level of high technology. They don't take away jobs from Americans. They create entire industries. And so that's why we have an Achilles heel, and that's the educational system. And again, sociology majors are not necessarily going to be the ones determining the future of Silicon Valley, but physicists, engineers.
This isn't the end of Silicon Valley, but it is the end of its monopoly. Tech innovation is becoming decentralized. Talent is dispersing. Investment is following. And the next breakthrough may come from places that once stood outside the spotlight. The tech industry isn't collapsing, it's evolving. And the Silicon Valley exodus may mark the beginning of a more diverse, unpredictable future for innovation.